righty. All right. Well, welcome everyone. And it's my pleasure to invite you to the 2000 or to welcome you to the 2022 EdInnovate Live, EdInnovate, I can't even talk anymore, EdInnovate Live Summit.
It's all right.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a long day. But it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Joy Spencer, who is an interim dean and professor at the School of Leadership and Educational Sciences at the University of San Diego. Her work sits at the intersection of mathematics education, teacher education, and educational equity, and seeks to integrate and investigate and improve mathematics learning opportunities of African American and other marginalized youth. Towards this end, Dr. Spencer, along with colleagues Perla Myers and Adisma
Dalrymple.
Thank you, and I apologize. I should have practiced that
one.
I had your name. I didn't realize there was others. I should have practiced that. Design and run STEAM Academy. I've heard so much about this. An interactive summer experience for middle and high school students from underserved minority communities in San Diego. Dr. Spencer also currently is the COPI on NSF, Informal Science Learning Grant, Bridging the World of Work and Informal STEM Education. This study seeks to understand how we can build culturally responsive and sustaining STEM learning experiences for Latinx students. Dr. Spencer recently chaired the editorial board for the Journal for Research in Mathematics Education, the JRME, and is the president of the California Association of Mathematics Teachers. Mathematic Teacher Educators, the CAMTE. In addition to her work in mathematics education, Dr. Spencer developed the PhD in Education for Social Justice for the Social Justice Program at University of San Diego, which welcomed its first cohort in fall of 2019. Her most recent publication, Access, Power, and Participation in Mathematics Classroom, captures the role of observation in advancing equity in teaching and learning of mathematics. And I am just absolutely thrilled to welcome you and so excited to learn from you. So at that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you so much for those who have stopped by to join me and to join this session. I am looking forward to our conversation, and I am quite excited that it is an intimate group, because I think that is going to allow for deeper conversation and engagement. And I think if you're anything like the rest of us, you're probably at a point of kind of exhaustion at this point. It's been a long year, and it has also been one where I think a lot of educators have been really tried in the fire. So I'm going to spend some time, even with that exhaustion, I'm going to pour my passion into talking to you about an initiative that I've been engaged in with my colleagues. Dr. Perla Myers is on the call. Dr. Odesma Dalrymple is not here at the time. And in that presentation, I'm also going to share about some of the thinking and the ponderings and that I've been doing in relation to that particular initiative, because I really think that we need to move to a place where we're thinking about joy and justice. And in order to do that, we have to think much more deeply about race and racism and how it manifests specifically in the field of STEM and mathematics education. So let me get my screen shared, and then we're going to get started. As I'm doing that, if you could, those who are here in the chat, just an adjective to describe sort of where you are at this point. Excited, tired, but here. So if you all could put something in that chat, that'll give me a sense of where we are. And also give the rest of us a sense of where everyone is. So, wait. I can't see the chat. Let me see what I can see. Excited for the future. It's wonderful. Excited to talk about science. It's fantastic. Thank you, Susan. Anyone, it would be great if everyone could put an adjective in there. Is an adjective? Oh my God, that's where I am. It's not a verb, it's an adjective. A modifier for a noun. Okay, anyone else? Great, excited. Edwina, you're one of our students. I'm so proud that you're here. Thank you for the great work you're doing. Okay, I'm titling this presentation, STEM Equity Initiative for Joy and Justice. I'm going to start off by kind of getting us, I want to position us and talk about what I feel is a crucial message that I think keeps getting missed. And to do it, I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about these terms, race and racism. Not so sure if you intended to learn about or hear about race and racism in an innovation conference, but I think it is essential. And we're going to do a little bit of a history lesson and think a little bit about what race is. Race itself is a social versus a biological construct. So those of us who study race would say that in many ways, race, it both exists and does not exist. In other words, it has great salience, but at the same time, it is something that we as a society and we as a people construct. We create it out of historical need, out of pressures. Race is the criteria or signifier upon which our social structure, and I'm going to call out the United States social structure. Not every society is organized around race. So let's let that land on us. Not every society is organized around race. But it is a signifier upon which our social structure is organized. If you haven't read Wilkerson's wonderful piece on CAASP called CAASP, I think it is truly enlightening, and I cite her there. Race is bestowed upon individuals. Let me explain. The 1/16th. Anybody here ever heard of the 1/16th rule? Put up a little thumbs up if you ever heard of 1/16th rule. Anybody? Okay, that's great. So the 1/16th, in some states in the United States for centuries, if you had 1/16th heritage, Black, you were considered Black. At the same time, there were in other states in the United States that if you had 1/8 heritage Black, you were Black. So all of your grandparents, great-grandparents, right? It could be European, or could be Native American, or could be whatever. But if you have one Black ancestor, the one is the 1/16th, one is 1/8, and you were considered Black in America. And then there was the other overall belief that there's the one drop rule. Anybody ever heard of the one drop rule? Thumbs up, one drop. Okay. So at the same time in history, we have these three different explanations and definitions of what counted as being Black in this country. So when we say race is bestowed, race is not something that has one definition. And if you're that, you're always that. And usually those in power in states and systems, they hold the power to give definitions about what Black is, what white is. And we're not going to have time to talk a lot about this Black-white binary in this country, but it's there. I just put that out there. So you're probably thinking about it already. Whiteness is granted or denied. Let's talk a little bit about, so in the 1940 census in the United States, for the first time, native-born whites and European immigrants were no longer distinguished. Both at that point checked a box called white. So before that time, if your parents had immigrated from Ireland or from England or Germany, you checked something different than the European individual whose family had been in the United States for a few years or several decades or a century. But in 1940, every European person, for the most part, became white. I think that's fascinating. So this idea that race became bestowed. So the criteria for what counted as white shifted in that census. Who made that decision? I think that's really important. How was that decision made? And what were the consequences? I think the consequences were monumental in many ways. Let's talk a little bit about a very important case that happened in, in 1922. So in 1922, Japanese businessman Takao Ozawa petitioned the US Supreme Court for naturalization. He wanted to become a naturalized citizen, okay? He had gone to UC Berkeley. He had raised his family in Hawaii, and a number of natural and land laws were passed in the 1920s, which took protection of US laws away from people of color who owned property. So without these protections, Ozawa could lose his land. And so that's why he was petitioning. He was petitioning to have this protection and to be considered naturalized. In his brief, so he went before the Supreme Court, he argued that his skin was, quote unquote, just as white, if not whiter, than any Caucasian person. I think it's so profound what he was arguing. He also argued that race should not matter for citizenship, but a person's beliefs. He went to church, he said. He was honest and upright. He raised his kids as Americans. He spoke English. And in all intents and purposes, in his mind, he was an American because he embodied Americanism and lived and acted as an American. The Supreme Court ruled that Ozawa could not be a citizen because he was not white. The court ruled that the best science available, very interesting, determined that Ozawa was not Caucasian, but Mongolian. And since he was not Caucasian, he could not be a US citizen. So in this case, we find a Japanese American who is, looking for citizenship, and he's told that you can't be a citizen because you are not white. So this is one definition. To be an American citizen, you have to be white. 3 months after Ozawa's case, Bhagat Singh Thind, he had a case. He brought a case before the US Supreme Court. He was South Asian. He had immigrated to the United States, and he was an Army veteran. If you look on my slide, you'll see him. He's standing with some of his peers, and he petitioned for citizenship. And he petitioned on the grounds that Indians were of the Aryan/Caucasian race. So I want you to remember that in the previous case, we learned that Ozawa could not be an American citizen because he was not Caucasian, right? And so here we have an individual who's petitioning on the grounds that he is Caucasian. He says, I'm of the Caucasian and Aryan race. He used the science of the day to show that Indians were actually classified as Aryan/Caucasian. However, the court resolved that it didn't matter what science said. White was not something that could be scientifically determined, but, quote, white is something that is subjectively understood by the common person. The racial requirement for naturalization was not removed until 1952. So I walk you through these cases to give you a sense of how race and racism, just a little sense of how race and racism have operated in our country and in our society, and the ways in which the state has had the power to decide and to determine and to bestow on people privilege related to race or a lack of privilege. And so this notion of racism, and I want us to hold this definition, is a system of advantage based on race, a system that is so crucial. All right, let me move forward. So where does this take us? And I'm a STEM and I'm a mathematics education researcher. I do all this work with STEM education. I was a math teacher for many years, middle school math teacher. It was honestly, the love of my life to teach those middle schoolers. I cannot express how much it meant to me. But it was very clear, even as a kid myself, and as I was teaching mathematics, that math was a space that was incredibly stratified along lines of race. And so I'm going to share this idea with you, and then I'm going to stop and ask you, how does this land for you? STEM is perhaps the most hegemonic space in education. It operates on the notion that its knowledge is superior to other kinds of knowledge, that only a chosen few are capable of learning it, and that as a field, it is culture free. Its members, so anyone who's good in math, good in STEM, are bestowed automatic and unquestioned status as intellectually elite. In the context of schooling, it is highly reproductive, creating the same winners and losers each year. its practices, its content, its pedagogies, its assessment, etc., are rarely questioned, and it operates through an excruciatingly tiered and hierarchical structure that maintains dominance over the entire educational enterprise. Let's stop and take just a minute, if you could, for me in your chat. How does that land for you? Does this resonate? This statement from this slide and the tiers that are on it, does it resonate? That I've seen that, I've never seen that. Just take a moment and chime in for me. And I want you to read what others are saying as well. How does that resonate with you? You agree with this statement? Yes, thank you so much, Susan. Keep going. Please, everyone who's on the call, please chime in. Yes, even the soft and hard sciences, right? If you're studying psychology, you're not as smart as a person studying physics. Thank you. Keep everyone, if you could chime in. I love this idea that it's hardly ever said out loud. That's something that's so powerful, because this is the way that inequities often operate. Nobody's going to go around and say, I don't believe Black kids can do math well. Yet everyone is thinking it. And there's the power in it when it's not stated out loud, but it is practiced. I think it's probably even more dangerous than in the past when people actually would say things. This is amazing. It is what I have been thinking, but did not know how to put it into words as a long-term educator. Thank you so much, Erin. Okay, let's move on. Let's move to the now. I want to show you a slide. Just take a moment to gander at it. You're looking at the CAASP. I do not put all of my eggs into the basket of standardized exams, so please don't believe that. But I want you to look at where we are as a state. I did this in 2019. In my opinion, in 2019, kind of the world stopped. So there was no sense in me giving you 2021 data. I think we need to think about where we were before the pandemic hit. These stats are what I keep in front of my face at all times. When I think about where we need to go, and I see this as a national imperative and a statewide embarrassment. When I see the percentages of African American, American Indian, Alaska Natives who are meeting, we're talking about meeting. So yeah, a small percentage of these students are exceeding, but we're talking about meeting grade level expectations. Hispanic and Latino, 28.1%. This should be something that every educator sits with. And all of us, I think, as I engage with my work with the STEAM Academy, this is something that I sit with and wrestle with, because it makes me think and remind myself of the imperative that is before me. Let's move on to another slide. Welcome to California. Isn't it great and equal here? Let's take a look. Let's take a moment. After you've looked at this for a bit, do me a favor, and I think we're all safe here. I think we don't have any Zoom bombing, but you could even unmute yourself. All I want is for folks just to share out what are some of the, what have you observed? What is this? What is an observation from this particular chart? Let's get at least two people to share. Anyone who would like to unmute. What are you noticing?
Joy, I'm not hearing anyone else, so I'll jump in. But one of the things that, as a long-term 32 years in education, I look at this and think there's no difference in the intellect of our students. when we get them. They come to the table they're all 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5-year-old kids. And then we give up? And that's my part that just hurts my heart is, are we giving up on the kids at such an age or not expecting as much and not, I just help.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. You're expressing some of the it's baffling almost
Yeah.
when you look at this.
They're children. These are
They're children.
children. And you don't come and say, okay, that group of children has a less capability or potential than these other groups of kids. There's no such thing as that. And but this data is saying this is where we are, but that's not the truth. This isn't the truth. The truth is we as adults let them down years
Yeah.
and years ago.
And you know, as you say that fire, that I want to see a different kind of fire amongst us when I see these sorts of stats. I believe in no taxation without representation. If I am a tax-paying person in the state of California, and I am Latinx or I'm African American, am I actually getting the same out of the UC system as other folks? No. So this is, to me, this is a statewide imperative. There's something going on. Anyone else? Let's just take another moment to share. Step in there.
I'm sorry, it might be loud back here.
Go for it, Edwina. You're fine.
I would say when I see data like this, I see an institutional issue as it relates to students of color. There's something going on institutionally, systematically, and not necessarily looking at an individual student per se. And so when I see numbers like this, I feel like we have to consider, like, at the institutional level, at the systematic level, what's happening when it comes down to these particular student groups and populations, and disaggregate this data. So that's kind of what I see.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes. So let me move on. I'm going to try to move fast. We don't have a ton of time. I want to talk about this notion of Black pathology and contrasting it with Black wholeness. We talked just a moment earlier about these sort of unspoken narratives which permeate our schools, they permeate our societies. Lopez and Jean-Marie argue that the lack of success that we see for Black students must be understood, like you're saying, Edwina, within systems of oppression, instead of pathologizing of Black bodies and marginalization of communities. It is important that educators reflect on their educational philosophy and practices when it comes to the education and schooling of Black children. And I would advocate for this. I would advocate for us doing deep reflection on the things that we accept as normal and okay in our schools that we don't question. For example, we know in the state of California that if you go to a school that is predominantly Latino and African American, that there are fewer AP courses there. And some of the arguments that folks have given for why that is that these students have less desire, there's less demand, that's the term that's used, for AP courses in those schools. So that's why it's like that. And so that's a question that I call that into question. Is that really the truth? Is that the case? When we see the low track class and it's full of Black and brown kids, who is yelling at the top of their lungs that this is unacceptable? And how do we change it? So Lopez and Jean-Marie are arguing that we have to understand what is going on within systems and within our own philosophical practices that allow things to be normed that should not be normed. Okay, I don't have a lot of time, so let me move forward fast, because we've been working and thinking very hard as we run STEAM Academy, about these narratives and about this work. My own work makes some claims. The first claim that I'm making is that mathematics learning opportunities shape the post-secondary options, whether it be higher education or military, job placement of youth and communities of color. We all know that, but we need to underscore it. It's not just learning opportunities in general. The kind of math courses you get access to shape whether or not you get computer science. They shape whether or not you get chemistry class, physics class. They determine in middle school whether or not you even get electives that are fun. So students who are in lower track math classes actually get less fun electives when elective time comes. So these learning opportunities are shaping, they're shaping the post-secondary options. Math learning structures and opportunities like courses, the tracking, the resources are racially stratified. In other words, they shift in response to a student's race or racial assignment. So you can expect to have different access based on how you show up in the world and how people see you. Math learning opportunities are racialized. This is a really important argument that I'm making, is that it's not just whether you do or don't get access to a high track course, but even when you are within a course, the type of mathematics and STEM education you get is different. It is more pedantic. It is more top down. It is less rich when you come from particularly racialized groups. The math learning opportunities and experiences of Black students, of African-American students, are shaped by fundamental beliefs about their intelligence, their potential, and their humanity. And then finally, the math education enterprise upholds whiteness. Those seen as white in the enterprise of learning mathematics reap unearned privileges. We don't have a time to go into this, but I'm going to start sharing a little bit about, if you get a chance to read my article that I've written with my colleague, Victoria Han, where we're arguing about how we got here and how we might get ourselves out of this. But in the light of our time, let's move into STEAM Academy, something that has brought me so much joy and so much hope, because I have seen it as a way to take these beliefs and to put them in practice, and so that to see if we can undo and shift some of the very poor outcomes that we are experiencing, especially in this state. Dr. Danny Martin, who I love, produced a number of axioms in his understanding of Black children and mathematics. His first axiom, and I support these wholeheartedly. Number one, Black children are brilliant. Researchers should not overly concern themselves with documenting how Black children differ from white children and reifying racial achievement gaps, but with how Black children can best attain and maintain excellence in mathematics. We spend so much time thinking about this, and all of our work hinges on this first axiom. We believe that every child who walks through our door is absolutely brilliant. And we spend our time trying to bring that brilliance out. The second axiom, Black children possess the intellectual capacity to learn mathematics as well as any other child. You need to sit with that, because there are some real beliefs in schools that certain kids come to us with greater intellectual capacity. Whether we speak it or not, it's there. We hold on to this axiom with dear life. They do, however, often lack sufficient opportunities to engage in meaningful mathematical experiences. So our job, those of us who run STEAM Academy, has been to bring out the brilliance, to shine light on the brilliance, and to undo this lack of sufficient opportunities. Every summer, and we're about to enter our 8th summer at the University of San Diego, we bring together, to me, what I think is a veritable Wakanda onto the University of San Diego campus. Children, middle and high school from all over the city come and for a week, and actually at times 2 weeks, converge and engage in some of the richest mathematics, the richest science, the richest engineering that I have seen. And we transform our campus, which generally in the summertime is full of wealthier, more privileged middle and high school kids. And when our kids show up, it's very clear that the STEAM Academy kids are there. Our academy, we use a multi-leveled approach. We have near-peer mentors who we have trained for almost 2 weeks before our young people show up. These near-peer mentors are undergraduate STEM majors, graduate STEM majors, and early career teachers. We have our academy participants who are middle and high school kids. And when I tell you that we recruit in powerful ways to make sure that we get Black children, to make sure we get refugee kids, to make sure that we have kids who are Latinx in our camp, we are deliberate and intentional. And then the third piece, As K-12 teachers are part of our academy, and we are working on, as we have this blue, the nonprofit organizations being part of this work. Okay, let me get to the next slide. Okay, I'm going to just show you a few things that we do. Joy is a big part of what we do. There must be fun and engagement and hope and excitement about mathematics and STEM. If you cannot present and show to young people just how important and how fun and full of joy this work is, how can you ever hope to get kids to take a pre-calculus class or an algebra 2 class if all they're ever doing is sitting with a pencil and a piece of paper? So there's joy. Dr. Myers is on the call. I think she might still be here. She is her expertise in paper folding and the mathematics that is embedded in that is profound. And what we have learned from our children's mathematical thinking from her work in paper folding is absolutely incredible. We do lots of mathematical visualization, lots of math games, and we pull out the mathematical understanding and learning in this work. You probably recognize some of these. There's much more to our curriculum, but I want to talk a little bit about our design and how we think about creating Black affirming spaces and spaces where youth of color can show up as they are and show up and know that they will be accepted. One of the first things we do is that we engage families. We rarely use the word parent. We almost always use the word family when we talk to our family and our communities. And that's because so many youth of color live in multi-generational homes, and they live in homes that perhaps they are foster care youth. That's the reality of Black youth actually in this state. So we use the term family and we invite and engage family in our work. We use 2 languages always. Most of our work is Spanish and English, but we have Black English is heard in our camp, African-American English. We do not punish children for using home language. It is embraced, and you'll hear hip hop, you'll hear all kinds of music playing in the background. Black youth of color need to feel at home when doing English, when doing mathematics and when doing STEM. If they don't feel at home, then how can they build an identity related to STEM and mathematics? We involve our own families. This is something that has been really pivotal to us. We let youth see that we also come, we're folks of color. We come from multi-generational families ourselves, and they see our kids. They see that, I raise my nephews. They see my nephews. They see my mother. They see Dr. Myers' children and her husband, and everyone in the camp and the academy understands that we are like you. I want them to see me, want them to see themselves in me. We seek out with great intention the hiring of Black, Latinx, Southeast Asian, and refugee status youngsters to serve as our pod leaders. We are extremely intentional in how we recruit for who will be the folks who lead and serve as mentors for our youth. We do not leave it up to chance. We don't leave it up to who happened to apply. No, we might be in Target and I see someone, I might say, hey, are you interested in working with youth? You probably think that's crazy, but we're intentional. If you're not intentional, you're not going to undo racism in this country. And then we train them. So not only are we intentional about who we hire, but then we train them to learn how to work with youth of color, how to understand the complexities of what these youth of color are dealing with when it comes to STEM and mathematics. We invoke storytelling and counter storytelling of youth. Every one of our pod leaders, before the 2 weeks is over, they have to stand before the camp and share with those youth a little bit about their educational journey. To me, this is probably one of the most poignant times in our academy where our youth get a chance to see their nearest peers share about what they have overcome and about the types of challenges they faced and how they persisted. And I wish time could allow for me to share some of these stories. But counter storytelling is a must when it comes to educating youth of color. And then we do a lot of noticing. We're on a campus that is predominantly white, is historically white campus. But we notice the Black people on our campus who are often not in professional or faculty roles. They may be our custodian. They may be one of our police officers. We notice them and we invite them. Do you have children? Do you have folks at your church that might be interested in the academy? And we are, again, intentional about making sure that we get youth who need these opportunities, that they get into these spaces. You'll see here, family. Here's a young, this woman and her son. She is receiving actually her master's degree. She actually has her master's degree in nonprofit education. She's a single mother, and this is her son. I happened to bump into her in my in the School of Ed one day and realized she had a teenage son, and said, hey, we do this work, and please, we'd love to have him. And this is our families doing an engineering challenge during our orientation. How beautiful to see our parents and families coming together to work with their youth, their own kids, their own nieces and nephews and cousins, and doing engineering on our campus. We are diverse on purpose. We don't just have diversity, but we have diversity within diversity. We have Latinx students who love anime, and Black youth who love soccer. We have a variety and a diversity of diversity. And I think that is a piece of the secret sauce, so that folks can see that there's so many different ways that I can be both Latinx and exceptional in STEM. I can be both Black and I can like soccer, or I can like basketball, or I can like classical music, whatever it is. There's a lot of ways I can show up in the world. And I think this helps our youth a lot. We are, like I said before, we focus a lot on counter narratives and making sure that stories get told, and that people see that youth come in so many different, their stories are so powerful, and they come in ways that are beyond the narrative that is traditionally told. Lots of fun, joy, play. We are outside at least an hour a day, every day. We incorporate the math and the science in everything that we do. The kids think, I think, oh, you can avoid math. Nope, we're still out here playing the game, and there's math in there too. There's patterns in this game, and everything is about joy and about inspiration in the work that we do. Pulling this all together, I tried to stay within my time boundaries. While race has great salience in the teaching and learning of mathematics, I'm often shocked how under-theorized and how underutilized it is when it comes to the teaching of math, when it comes to how math classrooms and science classrooms are run. It's almost as if people pretend that race and racism don't exist, and that to me is troubling. Each element, this is a take-home that I hope you all sit with, is that each element of the STEAM Academy is designed with intention, and attention to the realities of racism and inequity in the STEM education enterprise. And it's that intentionality that I think that is gonna flip the switch for us. I'm gonna stop there. Thank you so much. There's my email address. If you have questions, comments, you wanna come and just look in on the Academy, which will start in about a month, please contact me. And I look forward to having a few minutes to engage with those who stuck around. Thank you so much. Can I look at your, oh wow, I love these comments. Thank you, guardian of my neck. Thank you so much. And preschool, yes,
So
yes,
powerful.
yes.
So powerful. I want your voice and your message needs to be everywhere for all people, all the time. I don't even know how to say that. The whole time you're doing this, I'm like, this is it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Did others stick around? I'm happy to, I'll be here for a bit. Thank you so much, Erin.
I'm going to jump off to get to my next session, but I wanted to tell you truly, just I got so much out of your session, and I'm almost in tears because it is the right thing to be pushing for and fighting for. And if we don't, we're going to lose another generation, and then another generation and another. And I'm sick of losing generations of our Black and brown kids.
And Erin, I never thought in my wildest imagination when I was teaching in the 90s that we would be here.
Right.
I really did not. And I'm stunned. If you ever want me to come speak to colleagues or anything like that, if I'm so bold as to say that, I would be more than happy to.
Thank you. I actually teach at National University in their doctorate program, and I'm actually retiring from the County Office of Ed tomorrow.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
but I will keep your name, and I keep up with Lisa and the Jacobs Institute, so I will put your message out there. But you have the data to back your opinion, and that's what's so powerful. It wasn't just like you just came and said, "Oh, we need to do these things." You said these are, and you didn't elaborate. You just said, "Look at it." You said, "Look at it." Beautifully.
Thank you so much. Thank
I'm
you.
going to jump off, but I'll see you,
Okay.
and thank you.
Take care. Thank you so much. I know folks probably have to go. Let's see, Jackie. Fantastic. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan. Can you put your info in the chat? Oh, sure. I'll put my email address there. Great. Great. Anyone? Yeah, there we go. Okay, I know folks are busy and probably trying to get to their next sessions, but you can feel free to unmute if anyone has thoughts or comments. I'll be here. I'll stick around for a little bit. Hey, Anna, I see you there. Okay, you're probably on mute because you have to be. So just good to see you. Yeah. Hey, Perla, Edwina, good.